What better way for a son and father to bond over than their mutual love for the Dallas Cowboys? Hi, I'm Michael Davis with my dad, Mac. We're a star-studded son dad duo on the star-studded Cowboys Network, powered by Fans First Sports Network. And this is Dad and the Boys. If you're listening to us on Fans First Sports Network, if you're watching us on the Boom Broadcasting YouTube channel, we want to say thank you. And we got to do our very good celebration. We have a typical ritual celebration. We'll fist bump for field goals. Thanks for not leaving me hanging. We'll high five for touchdowns, and we'll do our celebration, and then we hug it out right after. Okay, so that's a little sneak peek when we're watching the games together, and we finally got to do that after a very, very long time of a drought. And the drought was because the offseason was here. And so it was a good time. It's a preseason game, so it doesn't really matter who won or lost in terms of the teams, but it does matter who won or lost in terms of the players. The final score was 27-12. Dallas Cowboys beaten the Las Vegas Raiders, their first time playing in Vegas. And we saw a drive by Cooper Rush. He was one of three, not much to write home about. And then the rest of the game, we saw the duration of Trey Lance. A couple things to point out here on the stat sheet: 15 of 23, 151 yards, one touchdown, and a passer rating of 98.3. Very serviceable game for Trey Lance. There are a few things that popped up also on the ground: 7 carries, 34 yards, and a touchdown, including a 20-yard touchdown run that set up one of the best field goals in NFL history. We'll touch on Brandon Aubrey's kick a little later on. But Trey Lance, I was on record, Dad, of saying last week I wanted to hold my judgment on Trey Lance until we saw him this week. And I'm going to hold it just a little bit longer to find out what my dad has to say, because you've been high on Trey Lance this whole time.
Well, I mean, my height on Trey Lance is the simple fact that you've got a distinguished football organization in the 49ers who everybody beams about and brags about how great of a GM John Lynch is and how great their coach is.
Which they are.
They are. They're not, even though we struggled against the 49ers here recently, you can't take anything away from that organization. They're in the upper echelon of the teams out there. And they picked him number 3 overall with very minimal experience in college. They saw something. They saw traits. They saw something that says, hey, I'm willing to invest a 3rd overall pick in Trey Lance for our organization. Now, they didn't know at that time they would stumble. He would have the injuries and stuff, and they would stumble into Brock Purdy, kind of like we stumbled into Dak Prescott
and
Tony Romo.
Yeah, I mean, we've had luck with quarterbacks, and not to mention, not just a 3rd overall pick, but they traded up to go get Trey Lance.
Gave away key resources and stuff. So I mean, there's got to be talent there. He just hasn't had a lot of experience. The one thing we all do in life is we make mistakes.
Yeah.
And when we make those mistakes, what do we learn from it? Do we make the same mistakes over and over and over, or do we learn from it and we move on and we improve? What you can look at, if you look back at game 1 versus game 2, you see a maturation for Trey.
Yeah.
His passes, this game you could probably count on a hand the bad passes.
Yeah.
Which the previous game that wasn't the case. Now, one of those passes that you'd count bad was behind the receiver on the slant, but it was catchable. He's got to be a little bit more cautious on that. And the biggest thing that really impressed me with Trey, I mean, his accuracy was good. his demeanor, it seemed like in the game, it wasn't too fast for him. He was making his reads. He was hitting the open guy, throwing into a few tight windows here and there. But you got to remember, he was playing with second team guys on his side, going up against first team guys for the Raiders. Yeah. I mean, because they played their starters for the entire first half for the most part, which was impressive. But the most impressive thing was, they say quarterbacking is 10% talent below the shoulders and 90% above. When he led that final drive at the end of the first half, and for him to have, you could see his eyes as he was going down the field, and he was watching that clock, and he was like, I got to get down so we can call timeout, so we can kick.
That was so smart. Oh, my goodness.
And it was like, and you could, if you were sitting there watching the play, you could see his eyes looking at the clock. And then all of a sudden he goes down and they call timeout, and they've got a couple seconds to come out and allow Brandon Aubrey to relax and attempt a 66-yard field goal.
Which he made.
Record 66 yards. I personally think that it should count. But
it should count.
It should, because 66-yard field goal is 66-yard field goal. And I get everybody saying that it's preseason, that records shouldn't be there. If you're in a game of any type, whether it be preseason, postseason, Super Bowl, or regular season,
if you do it in a game,
if you're doing it in a game, you're doing it. Period.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially a field goal. I mean, it isn't like it's going to be different when it's regular season. Yeah, they can say pressure, but he was doing that in a pressure situation. Yeah. Anyway, because he was trying to get a field goal to end the half. The previous week he kicked the field goal at the Rams, and
he had the leg.
He had the leg. It went a little wide right. But that Jen, I think it was Jen Stats, come back and said that the field goal Saturday could have been from 72 yards and good.
Yeah, he cleared it, which was awesome.
And if you remember the record, 66 yards, it bounced over the upright. It didn't like clear it by a distance. It hit it and bounced on in. No slide on Tucker there, he's got the record, but
he better be watching out. Justin Tucker needs to warm up the leg, but yeah, I mean, with Trey Lance, I was really pleased. That there were times it's like, okay, he definitely needs to clean up his slants and getting it in the money, putting it in the breadbasket to where you don't put your receivers in harm's way.
And you saw that later in the game. He was hitting the slants, so he brought them down.
And more of that was in the first half too. Yeah. But yeah, I was impressed with Trey Lance. Mike McCarthy said he was impressed too, mainly because Trey Lance led 2 scoring drives of 13-plus plays.
Yeah, I mean, what could you ask? You couldn't write the story any better for Trey Lance. Coming in the fourth quarter, leading your team is leading, and you lead a 13-plus play drive and chew up 7+ minutes on the clock.
Oh yeah.
To basically end the game, in any chance for the other team to make a comeback.
And like we mentioned, like he was doing, a good bulk of this, at least a quarter and a half against the Raiders' first team squad, when Trey Lance didn't have Ezekiel Elliott. He didn't have, Rico Dowdle. He didn't have CeeDee Lamb or Jake Ferguson or Brandon Cooks, like all the guys we will be seeing Dak Prescott play. Trey Lance didn't have those guys as disposal.
And I may be wrong. I mean, by the time that Trey came on there, Tolbert was gone too. He didn't play very long.
He didn't play long at all. And speaking of that running back room, like, no Zeke, no Rico Dowdle. So we got to see Royce Freeman. We got to see Snoop Connor. We got to see Malik Davis. But for the first time this preseason, we got to see Deuce Vaughn. And for the most part, especially, when it comes to the box score, they had like a pretty good even amount of opportunities. Everybody having 5 carries except for Royce Freeman, who had a couple more with 7. And I gotta say, like, everybody's like, oh, Deuce Vaughn's in trouble. And I think you mentioned this on one of our earlier episodes, or maybe it was just talking in the living room. Like, I would hate if they cut Deuce Vaughn because he showed that he can still go.
If you remember Deuce Vaughn, I mean, last year, he was a highlight reel in preseason at times, but it was always against second and third team competition last year.
Yeah.
This was the first, and then when he came in spurts throughout the season, he was getting nothing. This was the first time we really got to see him go up against ones.
Yeah.
On the other team. And now, mind you, he was going up against first team defense some with second team offensive line blocking.
Yeah.
Except for a couple boys.
Except for a couple, the rookies, Tyler Guyton, Cooper Beebe. We'll talk in a second.
And so, I mean, his blocking was suspect versus their starting defensive line and their linebackers. That move he made on that kid where he about broke his ankles and left him just standing there grasping for air was simply fun. It was fun to watch. And I hope Deuce does come back and really turn it on and have a successful career in Dallas. He is so fun to watch. And he's such a
shifty guy.
He's a shifty guy. He's small. And it's hard to find him. And his power and he'll put his body down there in an angle that it's hard for them to actually grasp him sometimes. And he can get lost in the fray. And next thing you know, he's popping out the other end and going.
Yeah.
He had some really impressive runs. I think he averaged over 5 yards a carry?
Yeah, it was like 6.8. 5 carries, 34 yards.
Which is great because last week we were averaging like 2 point something a carry. Both him and Freeman both had over 4 yards a carry this game.
And hey, if you're averaging 4 yards a carry, you know what that tells me? First down.
First down. It only is 10 yards, so 3 times a running and you're at first down. That's like somebody once said when Zeke started falling off the numbers and stuff, they said he's only averaging like 3.5 yards a carry. I'm like, well, if he runs it 3 times, that's a first down. That's all we need.
Exactly.
I think when you was in high school and we was and stuff, and we go to the local high school games. I think I nicknamed your coach 3 yards in a cloud of dust because he never threw the ball with his team.
Oh yeah, like throwing the ball here where we live is almost non-existent. But it was really good to see what Trey Lance looked like with not only a balanced running game but an offensive line who showed up. I mean, the big takeaway was Cooper Beebe not allowing any pressures the entire game, and Tyler Guyton. I mean, from the very first play against Max Crosby, who everybody considers Max Crosby a good defensive player.
He's an all-pro.
He is. He is a good defensive player.
He's a Pro Bowler.
But our first-round pick, Tyler Guyton, just powered him that first play. I was like, that was the first play. I looked at my dad and my jaw dropped. I wish we were recording that live reaction sometimes because I was like, Dad, did he just do that to Max Crosby? And then Crosby switched to the other side.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I'm trying to rook. And then okay, now let me go face. Well, let's go.
Yeah, it was night and day right there.
And Cooper Beebe did really well. And he played quite a bit in the game. He played I think like him and Hoffman rotated
in and out. Yeah.
In and out. Both of them had a solid performance. The fact that Cooper Beebe's starting to get the shotgun snap, I think it's probably going to be a matter of time before he is our starting center. Again, whichever player provides us the best opportunity to succeed and win in the game, I'm for. Hoffman's done good this preseason. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to throw out a name for you.
What?
That's going to shock you. Actually going back and looking and reading stuff. We had another offensive lineman that really performed well, both as a guard and a tackle in the game.
Who was that?
Josh Ball.
Josh Ball?
Yeah.
The guy we trashed last week?
Yeah. Yeah. Josh actually had one of his best games as a Cowboy in a uniform. I mean, he really did. Even though he did have a penalty for holding, he did have one of his best games, both in the run and the pass. I mean, so maybe there is something there. Maybe their patience and investment will pay off. Oftentimes that's not the case with Dallas. We're patient with players. Randy Gregory comes to mind. Randy had a couple of good seasons, but and now I think you told me today that he is being cut by Tampa Bay Buccaneers because he wouldn't report to training camp.
Yeah, kind of no showing. I mean, granted, CD Lamb's no showing right now, but he's under contract.
Hold out.
Randy Gregory just no showed because Randy Gregory just wanted to no show. But speaking of that defense, not necessarily defensive line, but linebackers, Luafau did really good. I was really impressed. It felt like every time we heard of a defensive play, it was either Luafau or it was the kid who came from the UFL.
I shocked him with that.
Dude.
Willie Harvey, baby. Willie Harvey's going to make this team. You mark my words. Number 55. He's wearing my boy
Leighton
Vander Esch's number. 55 is going to be on here. Harvey's going to be on this team.
I mean, that's on recording. So do you want to clarify practice squad 53?
No, he's going to make the 53.
He's making the 53.
He's making the 53.
He did perform really well.
If we try to put him on the practice squad, he will be playing somewhere else because we'll have to waive him and he'll get picked up. He should have had a pick six, folks. That was pick six all the way.
Speaking of pick sixes, Kamon Hall got his second lifetime pick six in this game, and it was beautiful. He read it picture perfect. It's the one you go to bed as a kid and you're playing football for your local school team and you're just dreaming of that perfect pick six. It was that for Kamon Hall, and probably a little sweeter for the Jones family because his first lifetime pick six was against Jerry's grandson, John Stephen Jones, over in college. So he'll probably be bringing up this one more around the facility than the previous one.
Yeah. And folks, you often come across making predictions and stuff, on sports sites and on podcasts and everything. Somebody that I really respect in the industry, and you and I have talked about him and all over the years, and I read a lot of his articles, most of his articles that he writes. RJ Ochoa.
Yeah.
RJ Ochoa. And you've even kind of hinted at it in one of your recent articles. My boy Wanye Thomas is making you look bad. You cut him on your depth chart. Roster prediction. Wanye's on this team. I mean, and I think I was hoping that it was oversight for you, RJ. But it was one of those things where he even brought it out. He's like, I didn't have him on my team. And Wanye just keeps making plays. He's going to be a phenomenal talent. Wow, what a secondary.
I mean,
what a deep secondary. I mean, now it's getting to where you're seeing guys make plays week in and week out. The kid that we just picked up, Booth. I mean, yeah, he got beat.
He got beat that one play
on his very first throw. And you know what? Deion Sanders used to say that a secondary player has to have a short memory. Even Deion Sanders got beat occasionally. It was mainly by Michael Irvin, but he got beat, and you're going to get beat. It's just like somebody said, well, giving up pressures and stuff for an offensive lineman or a sack. Occasionally, you're going to lose that battle. But the key is you're winning more than you're losing. The great ones win the most of them. And so you're starting to see guys in that secondary being where they're at and making plays. I mean, whether it be the linebackers or the secondary, at the safety or the cornerback.
And people were concerned because like Dan Quinn, what he was able to do with this defense, creating turnovers, and then to see in the preseason how our guys, not just like the guys who have been here, but new guys are taking the ball away because of Zimmer's system. Like that's encouraging to see.
Now think about this. You're seeing it. You've seen it 2 games in a row where the secondary has done well, and so has the linebackers. And that's without a pass rush. Our pass rush hasn't been there. I mean, we've had a little bit of pressure here and there. We haven't had the sacks. We haven't had the hits.
You haven't had Micah on the field. You haven't had Marcus Lawrence.
That's correct. I mean, Nealon's he's getting pressure and he's doing great. I'm thinking he's going to be awesome. If it wasn't for Guyton, we would probably be talking Nealon up. It's kind of, I saw somebody mention, what would you think about the drafting of Marcus Lawrence in the 2nd round? Only reason it's overshadowed is because guess who was in the 1st round? Zach Martin.
Yeah. Not Johnny Manziel.
Not Johnny Manziel. Johnny Football.
That's one time I can be like, Dad, you know what? You were wrong. I was right.
Well, I mean, we needed a quarterback at that time, or that was the perception.
We needed an offensive line to protect Romo.
Was Romo even here?
Romo was on the team. He was getting hurt.
He was getting hurt.
That was
they were looking at the quarterback.
Yeah.
And everybody says Jerry wanted Manziel and really liked Manziel. And there again, Manziel in college was
gross.
He was one of those players that he could ignite offense. It just didn't translate to the NFL, and that happens a lot, folks. A kid in college can do great. It just not translate for whatever reason. Sometimes it can be your head. Sometimes it can be your talent that doesn't translate. Whatever, it could be the system that you go into.
Yeah,
or the team around you.
Grant, it probably didn't help that he went to Cleveland, but still.
It probably didn't. I mean, that's usually where quarterbacks go to die, unfortunately. And there again, I mean, those kids, some of them get their career resurrected, like the kid down in Tampa Bay.
Baker Mayfield.
I thought he did great for the city of Cleveland at first. He didn't have the talent around him, I don't think. But with our secondary, they're playing well and they're keeping tight coverage. They're adapting to the zone that we couldn't play in the playoffs. And even in this one, you had your top 4 cornerbacks out. You had Diggs not playing, and you had Bland not playing, and you had Lewis over in not playing, and then you had Carson.
Out for wisdom teeth.
He was out because of his wisdom teeth. And we were missing some players like Mozzie Smith, who had an allergic reaction. Hope you getting well and healing up from that. Because we want you playing this year. I think Jordan Phillips was a good ad. He played some in the game and looked pretty good. I think that's going to give us a lot of beef there in the middle, and hopefully we'll be able to take and stop the run. And then you get to special teams.
Yeah, and we've covered Brandon Aubrey, but this is where I'm a little concerned, and this will be. Most of these guys aren't going to be playing offense or defense. If all our players are there, if all our players are healthy, these guys are going to be playing special teams. Like this is where they're going to make the 53-man roster. Brandon Aubrey has a spot on the roster. That's obvious. What I'm worried about is the kick coverage and the punt coverage, especially with these new kickoff rules, because there were several gaffes in this team. this past weekend. That was a low light for me when it came to this preseason game against the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, overall, the team as a whole, this was probably one of the better performances that they've had as a whole. If there was one area that you can point to and say, hey, we need to fix this, you're right. It was a kick and punt coverage because a lot of these guys, yeah. And I brought that up, and you kind of reminded me. You said, well, I said, well, a lot of these kids that are out there right now, some won't be on the team come, September. And you said, but Dad, if they are, they're going to be playing that.
Yeah. We need that good.
I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. They are going, if they're on the team, that's what they're going to be doing, is they're going to be doing kick and punt coverage. I will say this. We still got a few weeks, and I have full faith in Bones to get it corrected.
Oh, and I think that's the cool thing is like, you look back at last week's preseason game and you saw, the Cowboys, struggle on offense, not punch anything in the end zone. Defense did phenomenal. And then you went into this week and you saw a lot of the offensive, things like O-line needed to block better. There needed to be a running game. Trey Lance needed to put the ball where it needed to be. Like, those things got fixed. And if there's anything that I can count on, it's Bones Fossil is getting on to these guys this week.
Yeah. And again, our coaching staff, they catch a lot of heat. Again, like y'all said, on Out of Pocket, it is the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of people love to hate them. Yep. Of course, they're going to get grief more than your typical team. But our coaching staff, I mean, from Mike McCarthy, Zimmer, Bones, I have faith in them.
Yeah.
I mean, and we have some other assistants, coaching in spots. I don't think there's a better secondary coach out there than Al Harris.
Yeah, I'm so glad he stayed in Dallas rather than go to Washington.
And you can see that in the team that the secondary that he's building. Guys that have won assistant coaches of the year, and awards for their coaching ability. And I think a lot of people sit there and go, well, I think y'all had it in Out of Pocket, yesterday about one of the things. I know personally I commented on Herbert being overrated.
Yeah.
And stuff. And people was like, well, the Dak doesn't do well in the postseason, but Herbert's so much great. Well, you know what? Herbert don't even get to the postseason.
Yeah.
So I mean, and it isn't a talent that's around him because he has had a talented team. Usually, unfortunately, come draft weekend, I'm usually sitting here going, man, I hate San Diego or when they were San Diego or the Chargers, now LA, got that pick because they took my player. I mean, it's like they're taking my player. That's who I wanted Dallas to get. And, look, I mean, they got Bosa. They had Khalil Mack, didn't they?
They had Khalil Mack once upon a time.
And different
Denzel
ones.
Perryman. Like, list goes on and on.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's like it isn't from a lack of talent. They're just not putting it together for whatever reason. That could be coaching or anything. So I definitely believe in this coaching staff, and I think they will get everything corrected. And I'm looking forward to a great season this year.
I'm looking forward to a great season this year. I'm looking forward to our final preseason game on the schedule. And I'm also looking forward to playing the Chargers this weekend.
Yeah, I'm sitting here dissing them, and now we're going to go play them.
Well, it'll be awesome because we will get to
folks. It ain't going to be Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott out there and CD Lamb playing them.
No,
or Michael Parsons.
And it better not be Justin Herbert playing. Don't play your starting quarterback on week 3. Now I guess this Cowboy defense, even the backups.
And there again, I mean, I get some teams' interest in playing starters. I mean, I get that. Give them a little bit of reps. But folks, I watched the weekend and I watched Mahomes behind the back pass. And
That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
I'm sitting there to Kelsey, and I like Mahomes, but what if he gets hurt in that preseason game? That, especially if it's a serious injury, I don't think you want Wentz playing your quarterback.
Oh no.
For the year. So I mean, why put him at risk? I mean, it isn't like Mahomes needs to prove anything, and there's a lot of teams playing their starters in the preseason, and I get that to knock off the rust. But there again, sometimes you got to, with the salary cap the way it is and restraints there, and sometimes you got to use your better judgment. And I fully behind Mike McCarthy saying, guys, enjoy the games. The sideline's great over here beside me. Have a seat, watch it, enjoy it, and get your reps in practice and get your stuff honed in during practice, because why put you at jeopardy in week 2 or week 3 of the preseason?
Yeah. And with that said, we are going to talk about the players who will be on the field week 3 for that final preseason game against the Chargers. And we're going to cover that on Friday's episode on Fans First Sports Network on Boom Broadcasting. But until then, you may now return to your regularly scheduled lives. Thanks for tuning in for Dad and the Boys with Mac and Michael, powered by Boom Broadcasting and Fans First Sports Network on the Star Studded Cowboys Network. And remember, this isn't our first rodeo, and we'll catch you here next time.